Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz. Very happy to have you joining us today. This morning, or this afternoon, this evening, whenever you're watching this particular program, and we are on at different times on TV, and you can see it on YouTube as well, and this is also heard on radio. And I don't know what times of the day or evening it's on radio. So whatever day part you're listening to us, welcome. We had another guest scheduled for this evening, and unfortunately she became ill during the day, and we will get her rescheduled. We were going to be talking about some homelessness issues, and she is with Appleton Cots, and they are now doing something with Father Carr's place out on the frontage road. And so we were very excited about talking to her, but we wish her well. We hope that she heals quickly. And can join us at the next earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we've got two gentlemen here with us who are just going to enthrall us for the next hour or so. Immediately to my right, we have Ryan Rasmussen. Ryan is the new executive director at the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry. I always want to throw the word food in there.
Absolutely. It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is, but a mouthful, and I still want to stick something else in there. And then to Ryan's right is Mike, is it Leader?
It is.
All right. I have to confess, that was not a guess. I was over at the YMCA yesterday for a story that is in one of the publications that I write for. And one of the gentlemen, said, who's your next guests or whatever. I don't even know how the show came up, but I said who it was. I pronounced it Luder, and he said, "Oh, Mike Leader?" And I said, "Yes."
That's him. Yeah.
Right. So I kind of cheated there. I'm smart, but not quite that smart. But Mike, you are chairman of the board for the Pantry.
Yes.
So why don't we find out a little bit about you, how long you've been around the area, what brought you to the Pantry to serve on the board?
Yeah, so I moved to Oshkosh about 14 years ago to work at UW-Oshkosh, where I still work today. I've changed roles a couple times. Currently, I'm the director for the Center for Civic and Community Engagement. So my whole tenure at the university, I've been working with volunteerism or civic engagement, community engagement in some capacity. It started working in the extracurricular kind of space, the co-curricular space with student volunteers, and now I work with the academic side. So we have classes that partner with OACP, and we've been doing those partnerships for about 8 years now as well. We'll send 50 college students over as part of their academic class to learn what OACP is doing and take that back to their classes and use that to enrich their learning. So I've been involved with OACP since it actually started. It was one of our volunteer sites for days like Hands on Oshkosh, which is a big university service day. Sure. Student volunteer groups. I used to lead a group called Titan Volunteers. It was an open group for any student who wanted to volunteer on campus, and they loved working at OACP at the time. So we actually used to do the Friday home deliveries when OACP ran those. We would go out there. I'd get like anywhere from 10 to 20 students. We would pack commodity boxes, what the residents would always call them, but staple boxes mostly. Sure, yeah. They had some choice in it that they'd get, and then we would drive them out to Amro, and I think we also did Winneconne for a period of time, and we would deliver them to the homebound residents there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
now,
it was great.
You no longer do that?
That's a program that's changed over time at OACP, so it's not. We don't do that program anymore.
Okay.
But
well, we can talk about what might be in its place.
Yeah. But when we did, it was great. The students loved it, and there was always one very talkative resident. He was so fantastic. He wanted to share his life story, and I think one of the great things about volunteers dropping food off at homebound residents was that interaction. So that's who we always gave the new person to, because they didn't know. They weren't ready for it, but we were, and we wouldn't tell them, but they loved it. They got to meet him and hear his whole story. And then people would always be like, sure, how many did you do? How many did you do? And that person was like, how'd you do so many? I did one. We're like, well, yeah, we know who you delivered to. So we knew you were only going to do one, but that's part of the learning process. So for years, since the pantry opened, I've been volunteering with them. And it's a great organization. It serves such a fundamental, basic need in our community. And I've served on some other nonprofit boards, and there's just an opportunity where I was coming off one, and I had some time available, and I expressed interest, and they accepted me and took me in, and now I'm here.
So how long have you been chairman of the board?
I've been on the board. November will be end of 4 years, and I'll end my chair position at that time, and that'll be 2 years, 2 full years. So I'm in my second.
It's a 2-year term.
It's a 2-year term, yeah.
Okay. Can you run again to be chairman?
I'm sure they'd let me, but I'm happy to give other people the opportunity.
It can be draining.
Yeah,
I mean, volunteerism is wonderful, but it can, if you're like me, where you really are passionate about what you're doing, and you really get involved in it, it can be emotionally draining and sometimes physically draining too. Yeah. So, especially trying to lead a group of folks like you are. One question about what you do at the university, Mike. Are you focusing your volunteers, the students and or the faculty, just just to work with the pantry, or do you look at other volunteer places as well?
We work with a ton. So we have, depending on the semester, anywhere from 10 to 12 different classes that we're running. Okay. And most of those classes have 50 students in. So there's no way OACP could take them all. I'm sure they'd try, but there's lots of needs out there. But the goal of what we're trying to do is build this idea of community-based learning. It's a high-impact practice if you do university stuff, right? But the goal is just to get students to study some course discipline, but then go and have an experience related to that discipline, and then bring that experience back to the classroom. So we're trying to find opportunities that relate to the course content.
Okay.
So OACP wouldn't work for everybody based on the classes that we work with.
Sure.
But they've worked with a number of our classes over time. And even some semesters they'll have 2 classes working with them, viewing the issue from different lenses, which is kind of great. So they're there doing some of the similar stuff, but when they take that back to their classes, they're engaging in that experience they had differently.
That sounds really fascinating, and I would like to talk to you a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And maybe you can come back on another show and talk specifically about that, and maybe bring some other, we can accommodate 3 people at this table besides me. So
sure, we'd be happy to do that.
Oh, I just smashed my fingers into my microphone. Sorry, guys. I would really like to do a show on that.
Yeah.
So
we'd be happy to.
Let's chat. So Ryan, I said in the open, you are the new executive director over at the Pantry. Just exactly how long have you been there now?
So next week will be 2 months. So take it easy on me in the questions here today, because I'm 2 months in. So, but no, it's been great. This first couple of months have just been great, just getting to know the team that's over there, getting to know the volunteers, just kind of understanding the guests that are coming in, the operation, the flow, just how it all comes together and how it all works. It's been really, really exciting just to kind of learn and see how all of it is coming together.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and those are exactly the kinds of things we're going to find out during this next hour. We hope it's going to be an hour. If we run out of things to talk about, it's going to be cut short. But I think we can do it.
I think we absolutely can do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just a little fun side note here. One night I had guests that completely forgot about the show.
Oh, no.
Totally. And the one wasn't even in the state. Well, I had a crew member at that time who had written a book. And so she said, well, I'll talk about my book. Okay. And she was an interesting character because she had worked as, I believe, now I'm trying to think back, I believe she worked as an EMT out in the Phoenix area. And she was also a self-proclaimed psychic. And she worked with, remember Sheriff Joe Arpaio from, I think that's how you pronounce his name, but he kind of got booted out. Sure. But she worked with him, and so she had a lot of interesting stories.
Wow.
So we were able to fill an hour with her, but I think that's the one that I flew most by the seat of my pants. It was, I hadn't read her book, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
She hands me one and I'm leafing through it before we go on. It was crazy, but we got through it. So
awesome.
When you try, you can do anything.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
So what brought you to the Pantry, Ryan?
Yeah, so it's been a lifetime of experience for me at this point. All of my experience has been in the food, beverage, hospitality, service industry, large-scale events. And so being able to come to the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry has just really been a great synergy between all of the things that I have done in previous jobs and bring some of that experience into this nonprofit. As I've said before, I am born and raised Oshkosh, so I've been here my whole life, and got my start as a busboy at a local restaurant right here in town, and that's how it kind of excelled me into this food and beverage career. After that, I've got just a really great amount of experience working with a bunch of really talented folks and groups, not only here in Oshkosh, but also up in Green Bay. There's a little place where people play football up in Green Bay that I got to spend some time kind of learning a lot of stuff up there.
There is a place up there,
Yeah. And so got really some great experience there. And when it wasn't football season there, they had me travel all throughout the country to see a lot of large-scale events and participate in some really cool things. So I've been really fortunate to just have a really great career in food and bev. Most recently, before coming to the pantry, I was also at another place here in town that has an air show during the summer.
It's a little show.
Show, yeah. They do a few airplane acts, those types of things. I was there for almost 10 years as their food and beverage manager, overseeing all of their food operations, and then has spent some time working at the Oshkosh Food Co-op here in town as well.
Okay.
I served on the board there for a year, and a little extra time because I was also an adjunct board member when I was doing Leadership Oshkosh in 2021.
That's why I know your name.
There it is.
Because you were on the board of the Oshkosh Food Co-op.
Yep.
I'm a member, and it's a wonderful place.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's
Without
something
a doubt.
that we needed in Oshkosh.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and what is it, 20% of what they sell is locally grown or produced?
Yep, exactly. And so really just working with all of those local farmers, local producers, folks within a 50-mile radius of Oshkosh is really kind of their bread and butter of what they want to try to get in there.
Well,
so,
that's great.
Yeah.
So you're right. You have been around food, beverage, hospitality.
Yes, I've been blessed with a lot of great experiences. So being able to bring those to the pantry has been great. So hopefully it'll open up some opportunities for us here to do some fun things with food and find some different avenues and some different resources for collecting donations.
Sure. What's the restaurant that you started at?
In here town, Suplee Restaurant Group, Fox River Brewing Company was my very first. Yep. And at the time, I believe it was Fratello's.
Yes,
now
it was.
Now it's Fox River Brewing Company, but that's where I started.
To John and his family.
Yes, exactly.
It's a nice place. I like it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the now I can never remember this. The I'm going to call it a sports bar for lack of a better word. The one that's connected. What is it called?
It was the Field House, I think now. Is that what it's called?
Is it called the Field House now?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at us with this Oshkosh knowledge here.
I know. Well, and I will just share another little fun bit here. As it turns out, Ryan, his mother grew up kind of around the corner from where I grew up. And so, and his aunt was my babysitter, one of them, when I was a kid. So, still waters run deep, don't they?
Absolutely.
And it's as much as Oshkosh has grown in population over the years, you adding to the population as well.
Doing my part.
Yes. It still is a small town where people recognize each other. They have some kind of connection to each other.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait to, get home and tell my brother about this connection.
Exactly.
And I'm going to tell him that you referred to him as Billy.
I will. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. There's still people who call him Billy.
Sure.
That's just what he was known as a kid,
Absolutely.
He doesn't go by that anymore, especially since he's a grandpa. But I will say this, his father-in-law's legal name was Billy.
Okay.
When he was alive. So,
Sure.
I mean, he could be a Billy, but he's not.
You can blame my mom for that one.
Well, I don't think there's anyone to blame.
There you go.
So, I want to get a little history of the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry. And, I've done shows on the pantry in the past, with your original, I'm pretty sure he was the original, Steve Vickman, who was the original, executive director, and he did a great job. Yeah, but then he and his wife Patty relocated, and since then you guys have had a few different executive directors, haven't you? Yeah. And I hope that you'll stick around.
As long as they'll have me, I'll be here.
All right, good. Well, so tell us about the history of the pantry, why it got started, how it got started, and so forth. You being on the board would probably be the person to
I'll do my best. What's great is there is much more details on our website. So if you actually want real dates and figures, go there. And we actually just started the Pantry Podcast. A volunteer runs it and records it, and Steve Vickman was one of our guests on the Pantry Podcast.
Is that right?
Yeah, because we wanted to have that oral history of kind of how it all started and his take on it, and kind of looking back and whatnot. It's a really great episode that just released last week or so.
Let me just interrupt you for 1 minute here, Mike, please. So Pantry Podcasts, is there an app that someone has to download for that, or can they just listen to the podcasts, whichever one they want to, from your website?
We will have it on the website, absolutely. Okay. All of our social media, we'll blast it out there as well as soon as a new one is released. Okay. If you're on our newsletter, we'll always make sure that there's a link on our newsletter when that comes out via email once a month. But after that, it is on Apple devices, and so you can find the app either through the Apple Store or I also believe on Spotify as well. So.
Okay, so if someone has an Android phone, they wouldn't be able to get it through like Google Play then, or could they?
I believe they can. I believe there's an opportunity in there. What's the app called? It's just Oshkosh Pantry Podcast.
Yeah, I think it's an app. I think you just search in your podcast store for Pantry Podcast.
Okay, Pantry Podcast. Yeah. Simple enough.
There's 2 episodes out so far. We're very new in this. Yeah. But the stories with Steve are pretty great.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the fact that you're doing something like that because we have to keep up with the times, and if you don't, people are going to just pass you by and forget about you. Yeah. And we don't want people to ever forget that the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry is there. See, I have to say it out because I'm not quick enough to say the
OACP.
OACP. That's great. I can say it if I'm looking at it, but in fact, let me just put it here. OACP, there.
You got it. Perfect.
But that way, too, people who are listening on the radio, if they're just joining us, or someone watching this on YouTube or on the TV, they'll know exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. So I interrupted, so go ahead.
That's right. No, yeah, so back whatever year it was that this started, so I think it's been about 14 years now, and the time just before that, there were many small pantries primarily housed through different churches, and there was an ecumenical food pantry that was kind of leading some causes, and they got those groups together and said, how can we rethink this? How can we do this better than the way we're doing it right now? Because it's not really serving the need as it needs to. So that group came together, did the process, whatever they did in that process. I don't know much about that, but they landed on a centralized pantry, the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry, housed in the St. Vincent de Paul building on Jackson Street. So the pantry has 10,000 square feet there. It started with Steve trying to figure it out, as he'll tell in his stories if you listen to it. He had a retail background. I can't remember which retail store he worked for anymore. But he's like, I have a retail background. I could figure out how to move things. So I figured I could figure out how to move some food. And they had a very small staff. I think it was him and like a part-time person, or maybe like an AmeriCorps Vista very early on. And they were just figuring stuff out as however they could. And we even see some of those processes still in place today, and some we've recently evolved. Even like the point system that they used for many years was still there until we revamped it to kind of catch it up to times a little bit too. But it was just this group that came together of these churches to say, how do we really serve this need better in our local community? And that's what they settled on, and it's continued to evolve over time. And those churches remain active today, which is really great. Right before sort of the COVID wave hit, the pantry had been doing these VIP tours where we kind of get small groups together to give them a tour of the pantry and talk about our services and what we do. And we had gotten those original churches back together. And it was really great to kind of update them. Some of them were the original people there still, and some of the pastors and the leaders and whatnot had changed over, so it was good for them to see and just kind of reaffirm that connection with them, because it's like, you all started this and we want to stay true to the vision of what you had and continue to serve that, but show you what we're doing today and how it all works, and see if you have any questions, and think again about how we continue to keep you and your congregations and your groups together and actively involved with us, because a place like the Pantry takes the community to make it really successful, and they're key pieces in this community, so we want to keep them involved. So it's just been an evolution over time. You know, Steve ran it for a good number of years, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. There's a short-term person in there. Terry Green was the executive director for, I think, about 6 years. And then Tom Foydick was our executive director for about 2 years. We actually scooped him up after he retired from the university. So he was a great person to have for a couple years. And now we have Ryan in place, which is really fantastic as well. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about Tom.
Yeah.
I think his predecessor, I believe I tried to get him on the show, and we could never quite make the connection.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, Steve was on a couple of different times over his tenure.
Yeah.
So obviously it's changed. You said that you've changed some things and so forth. So let's talk about one of the changes, you know, that delivery program. I think that's really great. And you're so right about when you go out to these folks who are basically homebound and they're shut-ins. And I know for my church, there for a while I was, you know, going out. I don't know what has happened to it since COVID. I think they probably stopped it. Maybe they'll start it up again. But I would go out to some of the folks who are homebound in nursing homes or, you know, assisted living or whatever, and just sit and visit with them. And, you know, it's very relaxing because, A, you're doing something nice for someone, you're doing something fun, and in a lot of cases, these folks are, well, they're older than me. I would say in some cases considerably older than me, but boy, can they tell the stories.
Oh, yeah.
Like that one gentleman you talked about, Mike, who would just go on and on and on. And it's just great. I mean, you can learn a lot just from sitting and listening to people who have lived a good long life.
Yeah.
And can talk about how they used to do things and what have you.
And what's great about that is actually the way in which my office sits. So when you come in the St. Vincent de Paul building and you come left and get to the Oshkosh Community Pantry, my office is right onto the hall. And so it's always great because everybody is gathering there. That kind of becomes the first stop before they actually get it in shop. And so I'm a door open kind of guy. And so, of course, you know, just having all of those folks come in and want to chat with you, want to spend time with you, get to know who I am, you know, and really just talk about their lives and their stories and all of the things that they have had, whether it's hardships or not hardships. I mean, there's been a lot of great stories that we've had too. And it's a really, really neat piece of being in this job as well, like you were saying.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So since you're no longer then delivering, did you stop doing that because of COVID, or was that something that you stopped prior to that?
Different pieces have stopped at different times for a number of reasons. The last piece of it that was kind of hanging on was ended during COVID.
Okay.
And the other issue with it was just capacity. We were trying to be, you know, because the way the pantry is currently set up, it's an open choice pantry. So individuals,
now, what does that mean?
Individuals who come through, it's set up like a grocery store.
Okay.
You can pick whatever you want off the shelves.
Okay.
You know, some pantries are sort of more the box style where they pre-assemble or everyone gets the same thing and that's what you get. That's not our philosophy and our belief. We want people to make the choices that are best for their families. So it's open choice. They get a grocery cart, they walk the aisles, they pick the items they want. So we tried to replicate that similarity with our home deliveries, and that it became really time consuming to shop individually. This is before people did that individual shopping. We were doing it, right? We were the leaders in that, not quite. But so it was just kind of time consuming on volunteers, and then COVID made challenges, plus liability issues of going in residences and food safety issues. So there was a number of issues that just didn't quite make it work. But what we did learn during the pandemic was some of our partner organizations like Feeding America were doing these large-scale food distributions where semi-trucks would roll up and deliver pallets of food, and people could come up and we could put food in trunks of cars. So we learned there's still opportunity for food delivery. We just need to rethink it and now think about what works based on our current staff, our current volunteers, our current capacity, and then what is the need in the local community. So that's one of the things we're excited about. So home deliveries, I guess, will maybe reemerge in some way, but something a little bit new and different based on what we can accomplish successfully.
Yeah, because, I'm sure we all recognize that there are people out there who simply can't get out of their homes, whether they have no vehicle or, they have mobility issues for whatever reason. And, it's... Some, I'm sure, are getting Meals on Wheels, which is a wonderful program also. I believe Meals on Wheels, are they operated by a church organization?
I thought it's operated out of Advocap now, but I could be wrong.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. It is Advocap. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So that's one way that you can get meals. And
something that we push to help people is you can have a guest shopper. So if Ryan was a pantry user and he couldn't go, I could get added to his account and I could go shop for him.
Okay.
So that is an option that we have, and we're trying to use that a little bit better because we think the system works a little bit better, that someone who knows your needs can go through there and select the food that somebody might need and then deliver it. They know you, they can go in your residence. It all works a little bit better that way. So that's something that we do have in place to accommodate those individuals.
Okay. If someone didn't have a person, for example, I can't imagine a situation like that, but there's always people who have unique situations, whatever they may be. If someone just didn't have anyone who could come and do their shopping, is it possible to set something up online where they could check what they wanted, a volunteer could actually do the shopping, and then they could maybe come pick it up with Cabulance, or I don't know what the options might be, but is something like that a possibility?
Yeah. I'd say things are possibilities, and now that we're sort of at a different stage in COVID, it's one of those things that we want to re-explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some merit to that type of system. Obviously, there's a lot of logistics that go into that. Transportation is key, whether or not that's a driver that we can provide, or if there's another group in the community that can help with that. But we've had just some internal conversations about the e-commerce side of shopping, and because of COVID-19, everybody trying to buy online and even doing the grocery shopping online and being able to just have pickup. That is kind of the future. The future is now, right?
I think you're right.
And so, I think those are some internal conversations that we're having. We just need to figure out how the best we can accommodate that.
Yeah. Have other things changed or evolved over the years? I'm assuming that they have. What else is?
Yeah, but our biggest change recently would have been our mission change. I forget dates now. Like the time of the pandemic, all time sort of has ceased existed, I think, in some ways. But about 2 years ago now, or a full year ago, would have been a full year ago now. We revamped our mission to sort of get us back in line with where the lane we want to be in and the specific services we want to work on. So our new mission is the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry strives to eliminate food insecurity. And then our vision is that we're going to work with everyone necessary to accomplish that mission. So it's really securing us in the food lane of sort of the need space, I guess, if you will, because poverty has lots of different aspects to it, and if someone is food insecure, there's likely potentially some other things also going on. We don't have the resources to solve all those things, but we can do food really, really well. So we want to focus on that, and then if there's another agency doing something else and there's a natural partnership there, we want to explore that and figure out how we amplify both agencies to be successful.
So give me the mission again, Mike. Strives to what?
Strives to eliminate food insecurity.
Okay, I missed that word, eliminate. That's ironic because now we're taping this on what is today? The 7th of April. Yeah. All right. So the issue of the Oshkosh Herald that just came out yesterday on the 6th, below the fold, on the front page, I have a story on Hope Fridge, and the headline says something about eliminating food insecurity or solving food insecurity or something like that. It's almost what your mission statement is, and I swear to God I didn't get it from. So,
I think you're just in our zone. That's great.
I guess I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yes, so if you've got access to the Oshkosh Herald, or I think you might be able to read it online, it's a good story, and it's about Hope Fridge, they have a couple of refrigerators set up around town that are stocked with certain types of food, and you can just go and get what you need. And if you have excess food that you want to drop off, you can go and put it in the refrigerator, and so you can go to their website and see all that information. But that's another little thing that people are trying to do to eliminate this food insecurity business. So what made you change your mission?
Well, the old one, I think, as we sort of sat and looked at it for a while and talked about it, the only sort of bad thing about it was that if you really read it, it was all about establishing a place, which made sense. It was brand new, it hadn't existed before. So that was their goal, was to sort of establish this community resource. We're like, well, we're 13 years old, we're established, people know who we are. So now what do we want to just continue to do? So that's what really made us dive into it more specifically. It also sort of was a bit more murkier. It wasn't just sort of food specific, and we wanted to just really focus in on that food specific piece so we could figure out how to do that. Because it just helps us focus and helps us really dive into the issues that we see present. I think the biggest one being is we know there are people in this community who are food insecure, some of which aren't coming to us. And we have to figure that out. Why aren't they coming? Is it a logistical issue, transportation? Could it be that they don't think they're food insecure, but maybe they are, or maybe they're having other hardships? We have to figure that out so that we can help more people with the resources we have. We have really great resources, and if people can come and get some really great food from us, that will maybe alleviate an issue somewhere else, open up some resources, some finances to pay down a different bill that maybe they're facing. So,
sure.
And I think food insecurity is something where that has kind of changed and evolved over time, right? So the way in which we view food insecurity is not just in a traditional sense. People are on, having hardships and they can't get by. But I mean, food insecurity can go all the way to if there is a family, that's used to a 2-income household, and all of a sudden one of those incomes go away.
Right.
That becomes a problem, and you all of a sudden put yourself in kind of a food insecure situation. And so those are also the folks that we want to make sure that we're chatting with and giving resources to, because insecurity comes in a lot of different ways, and so we want to make sure that we're here for everybody,
and it
no matter the
affects
situation.
so many areas of a person's life.
Yeah.
Not just that you're hungry, but that can cause health problems, it can cause emotional problems, mental problems, mental illness issues. It just can run depression, which is another mental health issue, but it can just run the gamut of how it can affect a person's life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the health thing, because something we looked at and made one of our goals was to look at the nutritional content of what we provide and figure that out, to figure out how do we provide nutritional food for individuals, which we're doing through a number of ways. I'll let Ryan talk about our specific program related to that right now.
Yeah, so the biggest one right now is our Food for Life program. And this is a program that we're really taking a really hard look at, but this specific program is for those individuals that have dietary restrictions. Maybe they're diabetic, maybe they just have some restrictions with which their foods need to be different. We've created, and we've got a box that we're able to give those. So they're more protein-rich foods. They're foods that are either low in sodium, no sodium. We will make sure that we put those things aside, and we also partner with Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin to help us to bring all of those boxes in as well. So, we're currently looking at that program right now and saying, okay, these boxes are great, but then how is it that we can expand this to all of the things that we have in the store? We know because of our shopping experience that we have, produce, to be able to go around and go through the produce coolers and go through the areas that we have produce and to be able to select your own is a really great thing. To have the meat selections that we do and to have some of those more heavy protein-rich foods for all kinds of diets is really something that we're putting a focus on to make sure that we have on a consistent basis.
Sure. Well, I think that's great that you're setting aside, foods for people who have different diet restrictions or just diet choices.
Yeah.
What about if someone is vegan or vegetarian and there is a difference between the two.
Yeah, you bet.
A vegan does not eat any any dairy products of
Yep.
any kind. There are some other restrictions there too. So vegan and vegetarian, some people use them interchangeably, but that's not correct.
Yeah.
But what do you do in the way of setting aside some food for people who practice that?
So this is a great segue in when Mike was talking about kind of our open choice pantry. One of the new things that we've just implemented within the last 2 months. We used to be a points-based system, meaning any of our guests that came to the pantry were assigned a certain number of points depending on how many family members they had or a variety of different things. And that points-based system worked well for years. And that was something, if I remember from Steve's podcast, that he had created based on some other models in other places. And that had worked very, very well for a number of years. But as time has gone on now, and as we were taking a look at that process, being able to get rid of that point system, which is what we did, and making it more of a open choice, open pantry, and just limiting some options, allowed folks with other dietary restrictions who maybe weren't necessarily comfortable grabbing a set-aside box full of these foods the opportunity to be able to go pick whatever they want, and they didn't have to worry about the total number of points that we're spending in the store. Okay. And so what we were finding is, people were having a hard time making a choice because if they only had 25 points or 30 points to spend, they then had to decide, what am I going to take, what am I going to give back? And so, even from an operations side of things during the checkout process, the hardest thing we could do was say, oh my gosh, you're over your points, you've got to put something back. And it was just a really, it was an experience that wasn't fun for volunteers, and it put the guest, exactly, it put the guest in an interesting situation. And so by getting rid of all of those barriers, we now completely have open choice, and they can select all of those foods that best fit their needs.
And I think the points was originally designed to help with inventory control.
Yeah, sure.
Right, but our inventory has changed greatly over the last 13 years of existence. And we have a lot more food available now, so the points wasn't as much of a need as well.
Yeah.
And we've also changed that we've been open more shops per month.
Yes.
Historically, it's always been a once a month shopping experience. Currently, we're at 2 times a month. For a brief time, we were 3 times, and if we increase our inventory, we'll go back to 3 times again. So then the points also don't matter in the same way. Right. Because we also found, like, for our guests who have to bring a bus or maybe a cab or something like that, you're only coming once a month, it's hard to carry 100 pounds of food with you, right?
Yeah.
So that gives them some options. I also think about my own families. We shop every week. It's a little bit easier with menu planning and being prepared. So we want to provide a similar experience to guests who need to come as well.
Sure. Now, do they pay anything at all, or it's free?
Completely free,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what kind of requirements do you ask of folks who come there to shop?
Yeah, and so to start, the biggest piece is the area with which we serve is Southern Winnebago County.
Okay.
So first and foremost, as long as you are a resident of Southern Winnebago County, you're able to come to the pantry. Once you get to the pantry, there isn't a whole lot that you really have to bring with you. You have to have some sort of ID. Now, that ID could be as simple as a state ID, driver's license if you have one. If you don't have those things, it could be a piece of mail that just has your name and your address. It could be, people are paying bills online now, so if you're paying a bill and it's a water bill or if it's a TV bill or whatever, as long as it's something that's got your name and address, that automatically qualifies you to be able to come in.
Okay.
Once they get there, we'll go through a list of some questions, and they'll have some demographic information on there and some other background information. But overall, our 100% goal is to not turn anybody away. And so the most that we can do to make sure that when folks are there, we're asking the right questions and we make sure that they can get in. The other great piece is you don't have to pre-qualify to come. So if you need to shop, you can come, register, and shop on the same day.
Okay. Now, do they need to bring their ID and go through those demographic questions each time they come?
Nope, just once.
Just
we
once.
have a great
Okay.
software system that registers all of the information one time, and it helps us do some reporting. We've got some qualifications and some things we have to report to some of our partners, and but it's also a great tool internally because we'll assign everybody a card that has their name on it. And so as long as you have your card, you can come back for the 2 shops a month, or hopefully in the future we can keep going and keep increasing the total number of shops. My goal before I retire is going to be 31 days of shopping if possible, so that way we don't have any limits. So hold me to that.
I like it.
If we can. And so, as long as you have that card, you can come in. And once you come in, if there are any updates that happens either to some of the limits that we have in the store, the team there, either the volunteer team or the staff team, will make sure they guide you through everything. So
okay, so if someone so do they have to meet any kind of income requirements?
So there are some of those questions that we will have to ask. So we will document all of those pieces, and like I said, we'll work with each individual to ensure that they're getting in. But we will have to ask some of that information, and then work with you on how best to get you in.
But it won't limit you from receiving service.
Correct.
Right? So, because, hunger doesn't know bounds, right? And we don't, you may make a lot of money, but you may have a lot of debt, or you may have a lot of medical bills, or maybe you just lost your job. You have no idea, right? So income doesn't really describe need. So if someone comes and says that they're in need, we're going to serve them.
Okay. And then if someone, say they lost their job, and now they've gone back to work, do they have to then tell you that they've gone back to work and their income is now greater than what it was before? Or
at this point, we're not in a position to tell anybody who has claimed to us to be food insecure. If they still come back and they want to utilize our services after that, we're never going to turn anybody away. Because again, situations are different. Anything can happen in life, right? And that's what we're finding.
And usually does, yes.
Exactly.
Anything can and will happen.
As we've learned through a pandemic at this point, anything can happen in life.
Sure can.
So
I think that the pandemic was really a great time where we tried to push that message even more, because so many people's income was suddenly disrupted.
Yeah,
like if you were a server or you worked for tips, your income was very much disrupted, right? And I think that was one of the great things about the big box distributions that Feed America was doing with us as well, was that anyone could just bring their car up and we could put boxes in their car and they could take it. There weren't those kind of questions. So I think it really helped reduce that stigma of food insecurity and that stigma of need. And a lot of people, maybe even you were just furloughed for 2 weeks, but suddenly 2 weeks of income can make a difference in a family budget, depending on how what's going on, right? So we really want to continue to reduce that stigma. And if you have need, if bills are a little bit tight, come for one shop. We have some clients who come once a year. We have some clients when we're on a 1 month, this is the last time I looked at it, we were just once a month basis. We had some clients who would come 13 times a year because you would get an emergency shop as well. So we have the full range, and that's okay. If come when you need it and take advantage of the service. There's fantastic stuff available there. So we want the community to do it. We're a community resource for a purpose. So we want the community members to come. And I think that's a great thing that the community locally can do, is if you know someone who's struggling, give them this recommendation. If you hear our message and you don't need it, but you know someone who does, share that message with them. If you hear that they just lost a job, or if they mention that bills are a little bit tight, recommend that they just come one time. And just, think about one grocery bill. If that's $80, $90, $100 that you could save, that's really fantastic.
And you can easily spend $100.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Especially now, food prices continue to rise, gas prices rise. I think this need is going to continue for a while. So we want to spread that message that we want people to come. We're here for them.
Yeah. I know that when you talk about stigmas and that kind of thing, and this is my issue. I don't know about anybody else. I had to go to the pantry. It was, I think it was last summer, late summer. I was wearing shorts, so it must have been warm out. But I had to go there to get a photo. You had a volunteer who, one of the publications that I write for, they were doing an article on her about her volunteerism and that kind of thing. So my editor, since I'm in Oshkosh and the pantry's in Oshkosh, he said, hey, can you run over there, connect with this woman, get a picture of her at the pantry? So, and like I said, this is my own issue, and it may not be anyone else's. I felt embarrassed sitting there. In case somebody saw me. I mean, it's not like, I'm a little bit more recognizable than some people through this show. And I thought, wow, what if people think I'm here because I can't afford food? And, I shouldn't have been embarrassed, but I was. You know, do you find that people are embarrassed? And it was before you guys opened. So I was sitting there, I sat on one of your little park benches, and, you know, everybody else was kind of milling around at the door. And I was watching them, and I thought, you know, they all seem to know each other, and they're just kind of hanging out, and this doesn't seem to bother them. But for me, I was embarrassed in case someone saw me. Do you find that that's true with certain people, or not so much?
I certainly don't. You hear me hitting my mic just like you did before. I certainly don't, no. I mean, I think at the end of the day, as a person in my position and what the pantry is all about, as a community resource, not only to be able to put food in tummies, but it's also a gathering place. And so I'm hopeful that the next time you come, because I want you to come and take a tour and see all the great things that we're doing.
I will do that, I promise.
Great. Come check it out, because I think the way in which our volunteers and our staff interact with any of our guests and clients, I think is top notch. And I don't want anybody in the community to feel as though that they have to be embarrassed to come to our store. We like to say that we compare ourselves to just any other grocery store. The good news is you walk away for free with all of your food as opposed to paying.
Yeah.
There should be no difference, right? And so, you know, we want to make it a welcoming place for anybody in the community, because we all, as we've said, have a variety of different things that happen in life. And so if it's just coming to hang out, swap stories, chat with me, chat with any of the volunteers or any of the staff members that are there, we're all about it. We want to make it a welcoming place. So we don't want anybody to feel that way.
Well, good. And I promise I will come by and take a tour, because it looked wonderful. I was on a time crunch schedule that morning, and I just needed to snap these photos and go, and that was before you started, of course. But I will say this, everyone, your interim director, I can't recall who he was, but I met him that morning, and I met a few other people, and it felt warm. Yeah. It felt warm and welcoming. So I think my embarrassment kind of went away, but I do think that that's just an issue that I have.
Sure.
And hopefully a lot of other people don't share that similar.
And I think there's a lot of people that might feel that way, and I think the best thing that we can do is to talk about who we are, talk about our resources, and get it out there more so people feel more comfortable with us, so that way they know that we're a resource, and we don't have a stigma behind us, right?
Sure.
I mean, we're here to be able to help for a variety of different needs, and so the more that we can get it out there, the better we are.
All right,
and
excellent.
I think some people will feel that stigma because they'll feel like they have nothing to give. Like, I have to go and get this stuff for free, right? And that's kind of thing where some of that comes from. Well, you can still give to OACP. You can volunteer with us. If you have time, that's a treasure that we will take advantage of and use and push you to work as a volunteer. And that's a way that you can give back and provide to help our organization continue to work. And then maybe that will help reduce some people's stigma as well.
Sure. So it's sweat equity, but it's not required.
Yeah, exactly. But if you feel like you want to be able to give and have some skin in the game, and that makes you feel a little bit better, that's a great way to do it. We have a number of people who volunteer who also
and shop,
our clients.
How many volunteers do you guys have?
On a rotating basis right now, about 100.
Wow.
So, and those folks are, I mean, we obviously have our core group that are there on a more frequent and consistent basis, but we treat volunteers all the same, whether you're there for 900 hours or you're there for 1 hour. So we've got about 100.
What about staff? What's your staff size?
Yes, four staff members, and that's myself included.
Okay.
So we've got a program manager, Elizabeth, operations manager, Carl, inventory manager, Brandon, and then myself, new to the team.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm glad you're there.
Me too.
And I hope you stick around, because it's, it's confusing, and I think maybe a little bothersome to people in the community when an organization, especially a nonprofit, is always changing its leader.
Sure.
There was another organization in town that I went to schedule a time. I had to do something else over there, and then I scheduled a time for him to come on the show. Well, the next thing I know, he's not showing up for the show, but he's also no longer with that organization. He's went to another organization, and I wanted to get him on for that nonprofit, and again, he was gone. And it's like, how are you supposed to promote what you're doing for folks in the community if you're never around and you're always kind of disappearing. And for an organization, how can they get their message out if the face of their organization, yours as well, is no longer there? So we're running out of time. We've got about 8 minutes left. I can't even believe this.
And you thought we weren't going to be able to get an hour.
No, I asked if you thought we could. But I'm very pleased because this has been easy flowing, and I think we're getting some good information out. Where does the food come from? Does it come from Feeding America, Eastern Wisconsin, or?
Yeah, we have 3 different sources at this point. And so Feeding America is obviously a great partner with us. And we say at this point we're getting anywhere from about 60 to 65% of our overall food from Feeding America. TFAP, which is a government-based solution, is bringing in TFAP. The
TEFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program.
Okay.
Part of the USDA.
Another acronym.
There it is, right.
As is USDA.
So we're getting about 25-30% of food from them.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is coming just from private donations, whether that is folks bringing in food or that is us having to go out into the community and making sure that we're purchasing foods to make sure that we have them on the shelves to keep things consistent.
And part of our Feeding America sources are some of our local grocery stores.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's partnerships arranged with Feeding America to bring the food in. So great partners there as well.
Yeah.
I have seen other items being dropped off there, not just food. I want to talk a little bit about that before we wrap things up. What other items do you take? What do folks have to do in order to take those items if they need them? Talk to us a little about that.
Yeah, so there are a variety of items that come in that are non-traditional food items. So specifically, hygiene products, those are some items that come in, whether they're diapers for all the littles or some feminine hygiene products or toilet paper and paper towel, those types of things. Mm-hmm. We will most definitely take those donations in and we'll put them on the shelves. And of course, they are very popular with our folks as they come through and shop.
Everybody needs toilet paper.
Without a doubt, right? Exactly. So we do get a lot of those items in. We most recently just had to partner with Winnebago County Health because of the recall that happened on baby formula. We were actually able to get a donation and a source down in Milwaukee that delivered, or we had to go pick up 2 pallets worth of baby formula. And so we partnered with Winnebago County so that way anybody that was on WIC could come to the pantry and pick up all of their formula from us, even if they didn't want to shop. Obviously, if they wanted to, we were there, so they could. Yeah. And so we have, I could tell you stories, we have folks that will drop off dog food and cat food.
I was going to ask you about that because, we have 2 food pantries in the community for pets. We never want to see someone have to surrender a pet because they can't afford food. Yeah. So the Oshkosh Area Humane Society has a wonderful food pantry that, again, you just tell them what you need, tell them the size of your dog or whatever, they'll guide you through the process. Yep. It's very simple like yours is. You don't have to show anything and you don't have to prove anything. Yeah. And then the other one is New Possibilities on Algoma Boulevard, and they have I believe they have a food pantry right there, but I'm not certain. They might have some area donations where you can pick things up. I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me on that. But either place, Oshkosh Area Humane Society out on Shelter Court or New Possibilities on Algoma Boulevard. But you have dog or cat food there as well?
We will get it in, so there are some donations that come in. Again, those items go relatively quick, and so obviously if it's there on the shelves, it's there for folks to take. Mm-hmm. I will also tell you one that just came in most recently. We had some folks drop off bags of charcoal. Now, I never would have thought that having bags of charcoal, but if you think about it, if you're preparing food and you don't have access to charcoal for your Weber grill, we had it. And
well, so, especially with spring.
Yeah, it come
trying to be here.
Yeah, exactly. So really there are so many of those items that, if they are non-traditional food items, we will certainly take and we will certainly put them on our shelves for our guests to take.
Is there a list on your website as far as what items you will accept?
the great news is everything. And if there's any question that anybody ever really has, they can either get a hold of us on social media, they can call us. I think one of the things that we will work on and spend some more time are working on some of those specific asks and some of those specific need items that we want to make sure the community knows that we need. And so we'll be rolling out, and we just started most recently. Each month we're going to feature a brand new specialty drive, for example. So last month we had a spice and condiment drive. This month we're focusing on your favorite breakfast foods. As we get into summertime, we're going to have all of your favorite summer picnic foods you can. So for us, it's kind of a fun way for us to be able to not only ask for some specific things that we know that we need, but also make it fun for the people donating. So that way it's not always the same thing, right? Yeah. Now, that being said, we will take anything, like I said, but this is definitely a fun way for us to do it.
So say someone has, I don't know, a TV. They just replaced their TV with a smart TV. They no longer have a need for that TV.
Sure. We won't take that by us. We're a little bit more food specific and hygiene specific.
All right.
But our partners next door, St. Vincent de Paul, you can certainly ask them if they.
Oh yeah, sure, they'll take stuff.
Yeah, if they'd like to take some of those items.
That's you're right there with them.
That's the beautiful synergy of having both of us in the same building. Absolutely.
And they sell things.
Absolutely.
So are the stores connected? Like
100%.
So you can go from one to the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, it's really great because you will see both our shoppers and their shoppers that will be going back and forth, commingling with each other, and so
that's great.
Yeah, it's really been this great piece, and actually, it's kind of fun because as we, some of the times as folks are lining up waiting for us to open, you'll see a lot of our folks that are shopping around, doing their things, checking out the furniture, checking out, sitting at the tables, doing all that kind of fun stuff, and even talking with the St. Vincent folks. I mean, they see it as just a great piece too to be able to help sell some of their products as
Absolutely, sure. So everything costs money. Organizations, nonprofits need money to operate. Yeah. How are you guys funded financially to do what you do?
Yeah, great question. All of our funding is either through private donations or through grants. So between those two items, that covers all of the funds that we get. And so, as we've coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, where there was this big influx of food because people wanted to donate, they wanted to give, we've recognized that over the last few months to a year that those have started to level off. And so anytime that we don't have those food donations that come in, we will and are obligated to go out and purchase those things. So working with all of our grant partners and with all of the private donors that we graciously accept all of their donations. We couldn't do it without them. We certainly couldn't. Just like our volunteers. We could not do it without them either.
What's your annual operating budget?
Well, Mike, so as it stands right now, I mean, operationally, anywhere from about $400,000. Now, that is true operational cost without any of the in-kind donations that we get through all of our partners on food sourcing. And so,
So 400,000 to what could it go to? Well, or is that right about?
Go ahead.
If you're counting the food donations, you give a financial cost to that, and then we're closer to a $2 million organization.
With all of those.
Because last year we gave away roughly 2 million pounds of food.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
So when you put in financial costs to that, the budget goes right up. But just from what we have to purchase, pay for, paying staff salaries, et cetera, that's closer to the 400,000.
All right. Well, I still had some more questions, and look at this, we're out of time.
We'll come back again.
Come back?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. and I definitely, before you leave tonight, I want to talk to you, Mike, about what you're doing. So, I would love to have you guys on, or just you, or whoever, in the future, and talk about some of the new changes that you're doing as things evolve, and organizations have to evolve, as we talked about earlier. So
the need is great. We will be here. So.
Yes. Well, thank you both for being here tonight. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, Ryan Rasmussen and Mike Leaders, representing the Oshkosh Area Community Pantry, and we thank them and their volunteers and their staff. I also want to thank you for joining us, and thanks to my crew. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.